Okay, welcome to week 2 already. Hopefully most of you are settled. Some of you were already settled last week. So we will get you caught up. There is a video of the class recording from last week that you can access in the Zoom module. So the Zoom class recordings, they will be available every single week. Now, sometimes, and last week, for whatever reason, it refused to finish producing. So I had the video uploaded to YouTube. It's unlisted. Only those of you who have the link can find the video. So it stays private in that sense. But for whatever reason, it wouldn't finish processing. It was at 95% for hours, and I kept trying to refresh to see what was happening. So that's why it didn't get uploaded. It usually uploads within an hour of me finishing class. It processes on my computer. I upload it to YouTube, and within an hour it's available. I've got a link in the class module, but last week just didn't do it. So just so you know, I do my best to get it up within an hour of class ending. But sometimes technology does not work for me. And technology is great when it works, but we have seen a lot of downsides to the tech. There's been lots more hiccups lately than not when it comes to technology. All right. So I'm glad you did find it and were able to use it to produce your work. If this is your first class here, please note that it's up to you to get caught up. Again, that week 1 video tutorial is available last week. So last week we covered the crap principles. So we used the principles of crap so our stuff doesn't look like crap. And we took a look at Illustrator and we tried out the pen tool, text tool, and even threw in a brush in there. So hopefully, some of you did a great job and really spent some time on that. I applaud you for your extra effort there. And some of you, I could tell, were probably not happy with the results of using the pen tool, but the fact that you used it, you tried it, and gave it a shot just shows you how much skill it takes for a graphic designer to use those tools in there. So if you're hiring a graphic designer, you understand now that it takes more skill and time. So when you're budgeting money and time for a project and you need a graphic designer to use Illustrator, you know it's probably going to take longer. Just for the sheer amount of work it takes to use the tools and put something together. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Now you have some exposure, which is great. Some of you might have loved it and want to continue with it, which is also great. So there's always going to be this extreme, and everything in between. So I still hope you enjoyed the exercise. Now we're going to dive into proximity. So we're going to take a closer look at proximity and some examples of proximity and how items are related together. So we have a relationship of design elements. So proximity is best thought of as grouping like items together. So that doesn't necessarily just mean text. We package text elements together. And when we get into our business card lesson, we have a lesson on typography and business cards, and we'll move into business cards because you'll be creating a business card today, as well as a nice little word mark logo using text. Each lesson does not take very long to do. I had my in-class yesterday, and I forgot to do the crap lesson last week. So on top of doing the crap lesson yesterday, we still got all the elements done and completed in a 3-hour class. And you already have the crap principles, so you're all set. So we're going to take a look at what proximity looks like for when you're building your business card specifically later on in this lesson. But we're going to take a look at some examples of how proximity works. So creative white space and even colors and fonts can help create proximity, a relationship between like items. So of course we have textual content. So menus are an excellent example of how proximity works when it's done well. We have categories. Each category is under a header. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. Okay? Related items under each category and what you can get for breakfast, lunch, and dinner are listed below. So menus are a great example of how proximity works when it works well. And so when you're writing documents, when you're creating a poster, when you are doing any kind of visual communication, it's best to categorize and put like items together because it makes more sense to your audience. And when you categorize them, it also makes more contextual sense and is nicely organized and easy to navigate through the content. It's like, well, I don't want breakfast, so I'm not going to look at those items. I need lunch, so I'm only going to look at the lunch list. So it helps your audience navigate through the content to find what they would like to, in this case, eat. Okay, so how can you connect the ideas? So in the last slide, we see it's just black and white, no color. We do see that the headers have a bold style. So it's the same font, but it's a bold style. So already we can see that those are differentiated. There's contrast between the headers and the rest of the list. To make that more obvious, we can apply more contrast by adding color, which creates an even stronger relationship in proximity that these are all category headers for those categories. So by adding color, we know to identify them as related themes in this particular case. So that's simply by adding color. Now let's take a look at the space between. So this is another way we create proximity. We create space between our elements. So when you're writing a Word document and you are writing an essay and you have paragraphs, you have an end, you have a return, and you have a space before your next paragraph begins. That's because the idea or the thought changes from this paragraph to the next paragraph. So we need to add visual space. So that's a visual communications tool to add space between those paragraphs because the idea is changing between them. So they don't have a relationship. The thought ends, we're writing a new thought. We're moving on to, or we might even be moving on to a new topic altogether. So you've been using white space all along, but how do you do it in graphic design? Well, you can do it by creating columns and adding space to separate ideas here as well. So it's all food. We have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We have categories, so there's a relationship created, but to separate each idea, we can use white space. And in this case, we have columns, so space between the columns. All right. Changing the size weight of the fonts can create visual separation as well. So you can see there's what happened here. There's not enough visual separation between breakfast and lunch, those columns, to create a visual separation of each idea. So now we have eggs and bacon, ham, and. Also, the other thing that's going on here is look what happens. We have eggs and bacon and then poached eggs. Eggs is on a separate line from poached. So there's no visual communication. So there's no proximity between those two items, and they should be on the same line. We don't want to separate them and put that on the next line because now we've completely changed the idea. We've got poached and we have eggs, right? We have ham and we have a cheese sub. We have a hamburger and then fries later, but we want to, in proximity, we want to group those things together. So proximity, they must be on the same line in order to be read together. Very simple idea, right? But that's proximity, keeping items grouped together. And having things on the same line makes a huge difference in how that relationship works when you're reading text. Okay, I see this mistake happen all the time, and I wonder, okay, you know what you're reading, you understand the concepts, you're the one putting it together, But now you have someone else looking at it. Now you have another audience looking at it. So will they create the relationship if it's not visually put together? So we always have to consider there's someone else reading the content too for the first time. So consider everything that you design, that you're doing it for the first time. They've never seen it before, and thus put yourself in their shoes to know that they're going to need that visual relationship in order to connect those two together. So this is an even better way to visually communicate these ideas. You can create proximity by putting your packages in a color block like I've done here. If you want to visually communicate what the content is, add a photo. So now we have packages of information. Notice that the headers here, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, are in reverse type, which just means there's no print color there. But they nicely stand out, but they're all treated exactly the same. We're using repetition in this case. So we're using repetition to create proximity in the headlines, how they're connected. We are using repetition in the listing of the items are in the same font size and color. And then we've got a photo, but they're all nicely packaged in similar boxes, just different colors to help separate the ideas. So that is how proximity can be used. And then if you separate the ideas by space, you can create packages of related information. So we went from, there's your text. That's all you have so far. How do you visually communicate effectively to your audience? And knowing your audience would be helpful. How do you visually communicate to them that these are separate ideas? How do you do it very quickly, very easily, and there's no question that those are all related items within packages of information. And the visuals also help, especially when food is involved, because it helps you, one, visual communication. We process that information 60,000 times faster than text, because we've been communicating with imagery for millions of years. Text and being able to read has only been around, really, the world's population. There's still people who can't read because they're not taught. But for the most part, reading has only been around essentially for everyone in the last 150 years. That's it. So it hasn't been around for a very long time. So you can understand why we would process images much faster than reading a line of text. That's why visual communications is really important to reach your target audience. You can replace text with an image and still have the same effect in relating information to your target audience. So, text, a little bit of change here, space, make sure all your like items are on the same line to create a visual relationship between those elements, and then you can package them together, color, styles of fonts, and even imagery. Helps create relationships between those packages. All right, so when we take a look at a business card, so here are two examples of a business card. So the one at the top, you could say there's a visual relationship between investment banker and the name Amrutha D. You could say there's a relationship because it's on the same line, but it's not very clear. We want to be clear about these visual relationships and how those things are connected. We also have left alignment, right alignment, and then centered. So I redesigned that card and packaged everything together to create relationships between the items. So now Amrutha D, investment banker, those two things are connected. Name and title are connected, separated by space, and then the other information is aligned with the logo, and the logo is now aligned right with the text. Now you could reverse that and have everything aligned left. It's okay. And look at all that white space that we've created right here, but it's negative white space. Why? Because we've created focus over onto the right side of the card. We don't need to fill that space. So on this card above, we don't quite have the relationship we need between those two items. It's not a bad design, but there's no visual relationship between those items. So we could have put her name and title above the word GM and tried to shove everything here. It might have been a bit tight. So by moving the logo down and aligned right in the corner, we've created a much more visually appealing card, and we've kept all of those points together. Okay, so that's just a very simple way to make a simple change. And you will be creating a business card. Once you've created your nice word mark logo, you'll be adding that to a business card. And it's not too complex. So let's take a look at proximity and posters here. We have beautiful proximity created with the design here. So we have this illustration of the brush and the swoosh of color here. And notice how they've repeated that element in review. So we've got this visual relationship of artist review, and it is a call for entries. Look how nicely those are packaged together. But what do you read first? They created a visual relationship between the Tuscora review call for entries, even though there's a line of text in between. Because of the relationship they've created with the same font, that super bold font, they've created a relationship with that, and the hierarchy of how you read that. You're going to read the boldest stuff first, then the next size down you'll read second, and then the tiny type at the bottom you'll read last. So they've done a beautiful job here in creating visual relationships using different styles of text, different sizes of text, and the visual relationship between the artwork and how it's repeated in the word review. So I really like the way they created relationships here using text, even though it's all together. It appears to be all together in one package. You can see a little bit of space there, but it's just beautifully done using styles of text. So even though the ideas might be separated by space, that same idea can have a visual relationship if you use the same font and color and size. And you repeat that, and that allows you to create a visual relationship. So we have the same thing happening here with this cigarette. This is a very, very clever way to create this ad. So cigarette ingredients, so it's the same color as the filter of a cigarette, the yellow filter. And then all of the ingredients listed go A to V here. So it's in alphabetical order. And you can see how they treated the proximity here. The proximity is, we've got the name of the ingredient, and to the left, very subtly, you can see the ingredient listed, like the details of that ingredient. Okay, so acetone, so what it does, what it's for and what it does. And you can see that they go left, right, as they go down each one. It's very nicely done, and it creates the illusion that not only is this a cigarette, the image of a cigarette, but it also gives me another clever illusion, and that is an exclamation mark. Like, look at all these terrible ingredients that are bad for you in this cigarette. So it's just really, really well executed, and it's simple. KISS, keep it simple, students. It's very, very simple in its design. It's using one font, different styles of that font. It's using essentially a single color, white on black. This text to the left is actually white. It's really, really tiny, and it's hard to see on this PowerPoint. So the only other color they introduced as an alert color and to mimic the look of a cigarette is the orangey yellow color at the bottom. But it's just very cleverly done. And they changed the size of the text, the widths. So you can type out you can type out words, and if you want it to look and fit narrower, you can make it smaller. So if you have a longer word, you can make it smaller, but you can also condense it. So you can make the text 80% horizontal instead of keeping it at 100. So they've played with the widths of the font and the size of the font and the styles of the font, but it's still a single font in order to have left and right alignment to create that illusion of a cigarette. So it's just extremely well done. It's very clever, it's attention grabbing, and wow, it's a little bit scary to read it when you can read the whole thing as well. So if anyone used to smoke or still does, I used to smoke when I was a teenager. Bad. I was terribly influenced by my friends. So I'm happy to say I quit a long time ago. All right. So now let's create proximity using colors and styles of fonts. So you can see, just kind of like the menu I showed you earlier, we have text and categories, but by putting a block of color underneath, you can now package everything nicely in a block of color. And they've done a great job here. They've used repetition. They've repeated the colors from their logo in order to create those blocks. So we have these great blocks of information, and it helps separate the ideas and what they're talking about. So we have design package on the left. It's in one block of color. We have build, which is in another block of color from their repeated from their logo. And we have buy and sell, another package of information, all nicely put into separate blocks of color, which are repeated from their logo design. So it's just really nicely done. We had a discussion about editing text yesterday. Yeah, you might have to edit the text down to fit too into those packages. Yes, I have done much editing over my 20-year career in newspaper and magazine to make things fit. You have to get creative sometimes to make things fit. And when you're really stuck, you send it back to your editor and say, okay, you need to cut something else out here, or find a way to change this paragraph a bit. Is this paragraph necessary? Do we need that one in there? If so, then it has to come back to me to figure out how I'm going to make it fit, or just find another spot for it altogether. So when it comes to editing your copy and working with text, sometimes there are tips and tricks that I'm going to teach you this semester on how to make things fit when they don't quite fit. So you've got like 2 words on the next line. It's like, what am I going to do? How am I going to make that fit? The editor refuses to take out a single word more. So how am I going to make that fit and get those 2 words that are outside my text box back into the text box? And so there are a few tips and tricks we can use. I'm going to teach those to you this semester. Where there's a will, there's a way. But you don't want it to be obvious that you've condensed the text and it doesn't look like any other text in the rest of your publication. So there are tips and tricks to that. And I will show you that this semester. But again, back to proximity, creating those relationships, making things fit into nice, tidy packages. Again, another menu. Look at that. So we have room service on the left. We have that separate information from the breakfast menu, and we have this lovely breakfast menu. So they've kind of like sandwiched it, which is kind of a pun that was not intended here. You have the image of the coffee and you have the image of the eggs, and in between that content we have a nice list of what you can order. Now take a look at how they created proximity here. They have all of the names of each of the categories, but if you want any more information, any more detail, so what toast? So it might be hard to see on your screen there, but it says toast, wheat, white, sourdough, or rye. So by changing the font a little bit, they still have a relationship because it's all on one line. It's still all on one line. And we know that the bold sans serif font is the item, and then the lighter serif font are the details that follow. So you can create visual relationships. I know what I'm looking at and I know what I need to read. I've been educated just by looking at it as an audience member. I can see that cereals, breads, breakfast entrees, sides, beverages, they're all in one color, bold font, and then it follows by black text. So items within that category. And then the items have a little bit more detail and yet treated in another font that's repeated throughout as well. So they've used typography well here. They've used the styles of those fonts well. They've added some color to repeat elements from their logo. And they've created nice packages of information here. Also alignment, look how beautifully aligned that is. So good design should demonstrate all the principles being used well together. So contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity. All right, this one's really nicely done, I think. It's, again, simple in its design. We know exactly what this says, okay? So beautifully designed. So we've got the picture at the top with this nice record illusion in the background, but they've repeated that element. By repeating that element, they were able to split that element and create a grid and packages of information within each one of those quarters, right? So it's just really nicely done. And I'm going to show you how to do that kind of stuff too. We can create these beautiful illusions in Photoshop, and then we import them into either Illustrator to finish them or in InDesign to finish our designs. But I'll be showing you lots of cool things you can do in Photoshop to get some really cool looking ideas with simply the basics. You don't need advanced techniques. You don't need advanced knowledge. Using the basics, you can accomplish much of what you see here. Okay, but it's applying the design principles, the CRAP principles, that will really help you create professional looking, clean design. Also apply KISS. Don't forget the KISS principle. Keep it simple, students. You apply that as well, and you can create really professional looking design with basics. Basic knowledge of the programs, basic knowledge of the CRAP principles. Yep, you only need the basics. I've been doing this for a long time. I started with all the basics. Got all these great advanced tools, bells, whistles. You don't need most of them. Some of them are great. I'm not gonna lie. The close cropping tool, magic. There's quite a bit of magic in some of the things I'm gonna show you, and tools, advanced tools that I'm going to show you as your basic knowledge set, because they're too good to ignore and very easy to use and very quick to use. So I'm going to show you some of those as well. All right, so that is proximity. All right, so we're going to take a 5, not a 10. We'll take because I want to get into letting you go to work with the video tutorials. So we're just going to take a 5-minute break, and we're going to look at type and typography and business cards before you can go in and start working on your own design in Illustrator using the video tutorials I've provided. So let's take a 5-minute break. It is essentially 1:40. So I'll see you back at 1:45 to continue with the lesson and to give you an overview of what the assignment is that you're going to be working on over the next few days, if you choose, or you can get it done right after class. All right, so I'm just going to pause the video now, and I'll see you back in 5 minutes. So here we go. I'm going to share my screen again. And this one is called Building a Brand. Right, so when you're creating your logo, we're not going into full depth creating a full-on logo with an icon imagery. We're just going to use text. That's it. We're just going to use text and create what we call a word mark. Okay, so it's using Illustrator again, and it's using one of the fonts out of the 3 that you uploaded for your assignment. And you can use a combination as well. Right, so first, what is a logo? It is the visual representation of a company and should incorporate its brand values, beliefs, and/or functions. Okay, so think of it as the face of a business. When you see that logo, what do you think about that logo? It's not just a logo. It has meaning. It has meaning because the marketing apparatus, you, have poured meaning into it. And I took that line from Michael Beirut, who's going to talk about logos and how he sees logos and designs logos for many global brands. But I really like that idea of how you create an image, but until you pour meaning into it, that logo means nothing. So that is the marketing apparatus. That is the PR apparatus. Like, so marketing includes PR. So what does that mean? And so we'll let him explain it in a minute. Also, it's good to acknowledge your audience because different fonts and different colors also are there's an attraction to your target demographic, so you have to choose wisely there. And then also keep in mind the products that your logo is going to go on. Is it going to go on a box? Is it going to go on a product? Maybe the product is big. Can I identify that logo once it's on there? Is it going to go on the side of a truck? Is it going to go on an awning on a building? Is it going to go on signage? Is it going to go on your website? Where is that logo going to appear? So we have to think about the versatility of the logo as well. And I'm just going to check the chat for a question. Businesses pay millions for logos. Yes, they do. When I was developing a branding for the Record newspaper, so we were rebranding. We had been bought and sold, and the new publisher tasked me with redesigning 3 newspapers within our group. And so I worked with him for a few months. And then the head of the media group came in, who owned us, the president, to meet me and what I'd done. And he said, oh, it's so great you could do this in-house because we just paid Shaw, one of the companies was Shaw Media. It's paid $3.3 million for their branding. And I thought, I didn't get paid that much for branding. But there's so much more. It's not just a logo. It's a representation of the brand and everything that brand does. So yeah, logos, it can cost a lot of money to create a logo. And brands do pay a lot for them, but it's not just about the visual identity of that logo. It's what it represents. And you really have to grasp that and understand that before you can create a logo. So that's why things like Fiverr and a lot of those logo sites, it's like just people are like, oh, I only had to pay $25 for this logo. Well, good for you. Does it represent your brand? Does it do it well? Does it represent your audience? And so there's so much more that goes into it than just creating a logo, right? That's why when I asked you last week, I said, choose font set you want to use to visually communicate your personality. And so you can't just choose any font, right? There's reasons behind choosing a font that will visually communicate who you are, what you do, the color choices you make, the font choices you make. In representing that takes a lot of thought and consideration. All right, so we learned about the CRAP principles and, of course, the KISS principle last week. There are principles of logo design. You won't be tested on this one. You'll be tested on the CRAP principles, though, so keep that in mind. But the 5 principles of logo design are, I would say, common sense principles. Keep it simple. Simple. We don't need complexity. We just need to keep it simple. Memorable. When I see that symbol, I don't have to question what it is. I recognize it right away. Timeless. Stay away from trends. Trends are not good, and that's what the problem is with those $5 to $25 logo sites that you can grab stuff off of. They're trendy. They're based on trends. They're not based on who you are as a business. Versatile. Where is it going to be? Is it going to be on the side of a bus, on a product, on a website? Where is this logo going to show up? What's it going to be printed on? Where are we going to see it? And then, is it relevant? Is it relevant? Does it fit the purpose and identity of your company? Okay, so pretty straightforward, right? Pretty common sense list here. So when we're looking at types of logo design, now Michael Beyrout's going to go into similar logo categories, but we're looking essentially at icon, so icon or pictorial logos, which is a symbol. Now the symbol doesn't mean anything by itself. Often when we get started, Nike had the words Nike Sportswear underneath it, or it started with Nike shoes specifically. Now we see this Nike swoosh and we know exactly what it means, but it didn't start out that way, right? We needed text underneath to know what that means. We move on to the word mark, which you're going to create today using just text. And you can see how Disney, that's a signature. Dell, you can see the electricity it plugs in. IBM, it's just text, but the lines through it was how you saw their computer screen. Their very first computer screen had lines through it. Massimo, very hard to read, but that's his signature. So word marks, just using text, but you can modify that text and create relationships with the characters with that text to make it more unique to you. And then we have combination marks where we have words and symbols that work together synonymously. Even though you would probably recognize McDonald's, the golden arches, without the word McDonald's, most of these work together as a package. Like Domino's Pizza works together as a package. Okay, Starbucks coffee actually used to have way more text around it, believe it or not. They had to modify it and simplify it because you could not read that text when it became small and printed on a cup. So they modified it and simplified it, and it now only says Starbucks coffee, but it used to have more text. Google it sometime to see what the original logo looked like before it needed to be simplified for smaller sizes. All right, so we are going to watch designer Michael Beyrout discuss iconic brands. So now I have to share my YouTube screen, my YouTube, so we can watch this awesome video with Michael Beyrout, a famous logo designer in the United States, talk about logos. Also, I am going to pause it here, pause share, or sorry, pause the recording because I will get copyrighted, alerted on my YouTube channel because I upload to YouTube. So I'm going to pause recording, and the link is in the PowerPoint itself for if you wanted to watch it yourself, you can download the PowerPoint and simply click the link. So I'm going to pause recording. All right. So now I'm going to move on to the typography lesson, give you just a quick overview of typography before you dive into creating your logo using the Illustrator tutorials that I provided for you for doing so step by step. You can start and stop the video as needed, and so that should be helpful as well. Oh wait, I haven't finished going through the logos. Let's do that first. Just a second. That would be helpful, wouldn't it? All right, so let's finish going through the PowerPoint just to see some examples of how you can create these logos. Okay. All right, so are we recording? Hopefully so. Yes, we are. So this is a logo that a lot of people, when it first came out, did not see the arrow that was created between the E and the X. We have a directional arrow between the E and the X, and the only way that could be created is the negative space between those two characters created the arrow, so FedEx. And if you chose any other font, it wouldn't have worked. So there was lots of thought and consideration put into that to create that illusion between the negative space. So that creates direction and speed for its expedited delivery, right? FedEx. So very cleverly done, really nicely done. How about the Nike swoosh? So we got this great information about the Nike swoosh. So it wasn't just the marketing apparatus. How did she come up with the swoosh in the first place? Well, it's not a swoosh at all. It is the wing of the goddess of victory, Nike. So she simplified the wing, and that's what became the Nike swoosh. So it's actually the wing of the goddess of Nike, which stands for victory, being victorious. So that's where a graphic designer needs to know what the purpose of the brand is. Like, what is your vision? What is your goal? So having a vision statement and a mission statement is just empowering people to do sports. So just do it. So as Michael Beirut explained in that video, he's talking about being victorious in regardless of your athleticism, but just get up and do it, right? So they've done a really great job with the marketing communications over the decades, but Carolyn, the designer, too bad it wasn't me, Carolyn, the designer, understood how, okay, she researched the Greek goddess of victory, and she had to understand what that meant in order to create this swoosh. And now it's synonymous with the brand. We don't need the word Nike to work with it because it works well on its own. But it also has a positive direction, so it looks like a check mark, which is also positive. It also has a positive direction, so it's going upwards and outwards. So there's lots of other considerations to and things you can see in the swoosh that might create positive reinforcement for the brand. So really, really nicely done. Then don't fix it if it ain't broke. I can't tell you how many businesses come to me who say, I need to redesign my logo. It's like, why? Did you do something bad? Do you need people not to recognize you anymore? And do you want to rebrand because of something that's happened, whether it's in your control or not? Kind of like BP oil. BP had to change from their red and blue and white logo, and they've changed to a green floral appearance because they want to disassociate themselves with the oil spill in the ocean that caused irreparable damage to that ecosystem. They needed to disassociate themselves, so they rebranded. Does Coca-Cola have to do that? No. Coca-Cola has an excellent reputation. They don't even compete in advertising with Pepsi. Pepsi constantly and consistently compares themselves to Coca-Cola, but Coca-Cola never advertises as the competitor to Pepsi. One, Coca-Cola is the leader in the cola market. And two, Coca-Cola, they spread happiness. It's all about happiness and being kind to one another. So that's pretty cool. They don't need to rebrand. And you can see that their original logo was 1886. And so there wasn't much of a rebrand here, right? There's been slight modifications and the addition of color. But other than that, it remains the same. They've got a positive image of their brand and have for over a century. So don't fix it if it ain't broke. So if someone comes to you and they want to rebrand, ask them why. So could I make money off of those? Yes, but I'm not. I'm going to turn them away. And I'm going to explain to them why they need to keep what they have. Or I talk them more into, well, we can modify this to maybe modernize it a little bit to stay away from the trend. So maybe it's looking a little trendy from that time period and you want to update it. So there's an update is very much different from a complete rebrand. Okay. So you need to differentiate between that. All right. How about the Apple logo? Talk about staying away from trends. Yikes. Woodcuts were so popular in the 90s. I was forced to do them myself for the newspaper. Funny enough, a year later, I had to redesign all of those woodcut logos. Yep, because the trend came and went. So when a trend is short-lived, it's a fad. When a trend is long-lasting, it's classic. But some trends don't last for long. So in this particular case, woodcuts, terrible idea. So we have Apple Computer Company, that's Sir Isaac Newton, sitting under the tree, waiting to discover gravity, the apple falling from his head. So, good idea in theory. It communicates a lot in the visual, but it's not really in fitting with a tech company. Remember, this is tech. This is new tech, futuristic stuff. That woodcut doesn't look very futuristic. So we move on to the very simple, keep it simple, students. We move on to the very simple Apple logo. The name of the company's Apple. And so the symbol is an apple. Pretty simple, right? Now, why is it this one in rainbow colors? Because when it first came out in the early 90s, this rainbow signified that anyone could use, despite their level of tech, could use a Macintosh computer. They were really easy to use. Anyone could use one. PCs, there was lots to learn. You had to know some coding. You had to understand naming conventions of things. It was a little more difficult to use. And I, too, had to take a course on how to use a PC computer because they were much more complex to file and find things and code things and store things. Apple computers, just like the operating system is today, was the way it was when it was introduced. It was pretty cool. It was so easy to use. And thus we have the rainbow colors. But then a movement happened in the mid-90s, and that was the LGBTQ movement. It didn't have that many letters, and there's way more letters now, but it was the gay and lesbian movement in the mid-90s, which then adopted the rainbow flag as for its movement. So now Apple, it's out of their control. They have no control over this happening. So in order to be all inclusive and stick with tech, they modified and simplified their logo to the Apple we see today. So the apple on the left actually isn't the apple we see today. The apple looks like what the computer itself looked like at the time, which was a plastic bubble of sorts. But it does have a more futuristic look. And now they've simplified it to just a flat icon. I don't know if you've noticed, but see the leaf? That shape, if you moved it into the apple itself, would complete the apple over here. So take the leaf, move it over, and plunk it in there, and you now have a complete apple. So that's pretty cool, too. They've left it open to interpretation over what the bite of the apple means. Is it the apple of knowledge? Take a bite out of life, like get going, let's go. What could it mean? Well, they've left that to you, the consumer, to decide. They've never really said exactly what it is. Okay. Samsung. Okay. Alphonse, can you please explain what you mean by saying Samsung just now? Yes? No? Sorry, I can't really hear you.
I meant like that is just my interpretation of what the missing byte would be.
Oh, the missing byte meaning Samsung?
Yeah.
So what do you mean by that? Sorry, I still don't understand the meaning behind the Samsung meaning behind that. Oh, you'll explain it later? Okay. All right. So we'll leave that to interpretation as well. Oh, you have network issues. Okay. So I am curious because I would like to know what your thoughts are on that. All right. And then we have this brand merger. Imagine being the graphic designer tasked to blending these four companies together. So you notice the links that are there. It's like, how are we going to, maybe these shapes, these triangles, there's triangles in each one of these except for horse. What can we do? Oh, what about you just remove the symbols and keep the circles? They're merged. And that's what we see as Audi today. Also, take a look. This is a car company who manufacture vehicles, and take a look at their logo. You'll notice that a lot of car manufacturers have metallic looking logos. Why? Because they're made out of metal. And so they're visually communicating what the product is made out of. Good steel. right? It also gives us a more 3D illusion here. That's a 3D created in Illustrator, this logo. And there are ways to do that. And so you just see this nice combination here. But that's what we recognize today. So really well done in keeping it simple, right? Sometimes the best idea is the simplest idea. Don't overcomplicate things. All right. So before we move on to Illustrator, let's look at one last PowerPoint. And that is a quick lesson on typography before I let you go to work on your Illustrator logo. So you'll be using Illustrator. Stick with Illustrator. We touched on it last week. You can use the tools that were demonstrated in there. So if you did the pen tool practice, you'll also know how to use the white arrow. You probably don't need to use it, but I do show you how you can do that and modify your text in the Illustrator tutorial that I provided for you for creating your logo. Once you've created your logo, it's a simple copy paste into a new document that's 3.5 by 2 inches. And you add text on a business card. It should take you a whole 5 to 10 minutes max. That's all it takes to create a business card because we're not doing anything fancy. We just want to make sure everything fits and that the information is on there with your newly created logo that you created in the previous video tutorial. Then you take that information, copy it, and paste it into a letter size document. Just put this at the top, put that at the bottom, and you're done. It takes no time in the grand scheme of things to do. So you'll be able to complete it in the rest of the time of the class that we have allotted for today. But I will extend it like you have 2 or 3 full, you have till Sunday night to complete it. So if you are in another time zone and you're ready to fall asleep, that's okay. You have 3 days. You have till Sunday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time to complete it. Okay? All right. So I think that might have been where some of the questions were. Fanil, do you have some questions?
So, ma'am, we only have to use the text tool or the fonts which we have submitted, or we are free to download other fonts.
If you decide that your fonts aren't quite what you thought they were going to be, you can always download some other fonts.
And can we use some like graffiti images or something like a magic wand or something to add the name?
I wouldn't add any symbolism now. I would stick with just your name because later on in the semester, as we develop more ideas about who we are and how we can symbolize ourselves, we're going to complete a logo with an icon later on in the semester. So just for today,
Okay, and
text.
yes, ma'am. And our logo, like our text, should meaning like our personality, right?
Yeah, you want it to have, so when you watch my video, you'll see how I chose the font that I chose, and why it works together, and how it symbolizes a little bit of who I am and what I want to say about myself. Okay.
Okay, like example fun level.
Yeah. So for example, so I'm going to actually share my screen again. I'm going to share my full screen this time. Because we're just going to do a quick overview of dafont.com. So you've downloaded your fonts, you've uploaded them for me, I've graded them, and now you've changed your mind. That's okay. You can absolutely change your mind. And you can download new fonts. So, for example, if I want to visually communicate my Celtic heritage, there's actually fonts for that. So I can go under this theme in dafont.com under Gothic and choose Celtic. Once I've chosen a theme, I can type in my name in the preview, which was all in the video recording from last week. So I'm just doing a quick overview here. And once I've typed in my name, I can hit submit and I can see what those characters look like for my name. But now when you read my name, there is my cultural heritage being projected through the visual communications, which is the font that I chose. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? So I'm trying to visually communicate that I have Celtic heritage. If I had different heritage, there's foreign looks. There we go. You can see visually communicated. This is Mexican heritage. You can see the visual communications, right, in this. And that might be cultural heritage. What if I'm sweet and romantic? I don't think I'm that romantic, but what if I want to project that I'm a bit of a romantic and I do like watching rom-coms, romantic comedies. But I could choose a font with a heart in it. And that might be what I would like people to know about me, is that I'm a bit of a romantic, or I just love everybody, or something like that. So you can see that these project a whole other story from culture, right? This says more about me. Maybe I'm really into sports. So I'm going to go to old school. There we go. And those are like what sports teams put on their sports jackets. So this is very indicative of sports teams. So I could use that. Now I'm older sports teams, so maybe I go for the grungy, worn out sports team effect here. But do you see how fonts can visually communicate an idea? And so that's why I like to think of fonts as having personalities. They can convey visually something that a font like this, sans serif, cannot. It's plain. It can be visually attractive, and it's very contrasting, can add a lot of focus, but what does it say? What does it say about you? So you can choose a font that helps visually communicate a little bit about your personality. Okay, does that make sense?
So yes, ma'am. We have to just download the forms for fonts which are representing ourselves, and we have to just type that. We cannot do the customizations in that right now.
Well, you will be doing the customization actually. In the video tutorial, I show you how to modify that and package the font. You're going to create outlines, you're going to move things around, and you're going to package it together so it's more unique to you. It's not just your name typed out.
Okay, ma'am. That was my question. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So once you've typed out your name, there's a little bit more to it than that. We then modify it in Illustrator to create it, to make it look more logo, like word mark.
And we don't have to put it into any letterhead or business card, right?
Yep. And then, so you do your logo first. So the video tutorials, they're all ready to go. So if I go to the video tutorials here, you'll see this right here. There's your logo draft tutorial. Once you've completed that and saved your file, move on to the business card. So you're going to copy that logo and paste it into your business card. Add the rest of the text that you need. You can even copy my text if you'd like. So you can use the Conestoga information if you'd like. It's in my business card example. So I use Conestoga, the venue, the address, and the contact information is all from Conestoga. So you're welcome to use that. If you don't want to personalize it for you, that's okay. And then you create your letterhead draft. And here's how you save your files. So for those of you I asked, I said, can you please save a PDF in the lesson from last week? A PDF is the way that you can embed your fonts. So if your fonts aren't outlined, I can't read them because I'm missing your font. So when I open your .ai file from your nameplate, I can't read your font. But if you file save as a PDF and follow that little video tutorial, it's only a few minutes long, then you can save your file properly for industry standard so that the fonts are embedded, and then I can read it as you see it on your own laptop, even though I'm missing your fonts. Okay.
And we have to submit the Illustrator files as well. We did in the last assignment, right? Same as that.
Yeah, you're going to save PDF files, but also save your .ai files. I ask you to save both always, and you can upload both into each file type, the .ai, which is your working file, and the PDF into the file folder. That way, if they get corrupted on your own laptop or they disappear for whatever reason, you've got access to them and you can download them from there and keep working on them. Okay?
Thank you so much, ma'am.
You're welcome. Okay. So you have to submit the logo, business card, and letterhead by Sunday night. Yes, it's not as complex and time consuming as you think. Once you complete the logo, you copy and paste it into your business card, add your text. Once you finish your business card, select all that, copy and paste it into a letterhead. That's a letter size page. Move your text to where it needs to be on a letterhead, save it, and you're done. It's not as complex as it sounds. Okay. If you, oh yes, and the nameplate. For those of you who need to upload the nameplate and you put it in the wrong spot, some of you put it in the wrong folder. Can you please make a habit of making sure you're following the instructions as to where it goes? So under course tools, under assignments, here we go. You cannot click on your submission. Do not click on the word that says submission here. Okay, so I'm going to view as a student, so you'll see what I see what you see. Okay, so under course tools assignments, if you need to upload yet another assignment because I've asked you to, do not click on the submitted file. It'll say submission. Don't click on that to upload a file. Another one, it won't let you do it there. Where you do it is, so if you need to upload a nameplate, click on the word nameplate. Don't click over here because you've already got a submission. Click on nameplate in order to add another submission. Okay, this will allow you. I have unlimited uploads in all of my folders. There is no reason that you can't upload new files. So make sure you click on the name of the assignment, not your submitted assignment. Okay, is that clear? Do not use Word. Okay, please don't use Word. It is an Illustrator. You are being graded on your Illustrator skills. So don't forget to use Illustrator. How do you use external fonts in Illustrator? As soon as you download them from dafont.com, you need to install them. Okay, this is also from week 1. So if I like this font, I've already downloaded this font many, many times. I'll choose another one. So I'm going to choose a complementary font to use on my business card. So I'm going to use this one called, let's see, Champagne and Limousines. When you need to download a font and install it, you download it. Now I'm on a Macintosh computer, but it's the same process. It just might look a little differently. Once I've downloaded the font, I'm going to find it. Oh, I'm in Chrome. That's fine. It didn't show up at the bottom of my screen in that nice little handy, yeah, downloads. It's up here. Okay. Now that I've downloaded it, my Mac automatically unzips the file. You usually have a zip folder, so double click the zip folder to get inside of your file folder, and you'll see something like this. So this one comes with a few styles. So I have basically regular. It doesn't say regular, but that would be regular, italic, bold, and bold italic. So I want the regular and the bold. So I'm going to double click the font, which will now reveal an install window. PCs also have the same window, but on a Mac, install font is at the bottom right. On a PC, it'll be at the top left. Okay, so that's the difference between PC and Mac. So I'm going to install the font. Once it's installed, okay, it is now installed. If I want to use it, I just go to Illustrator, I can go to any program now, actually. So I can create a new document. And when I start typing, and I click on the black arrow, this is all in the video tutorial. I'm going to make that bigger so we can see it. What was the name of that font? Champagne. Starts with Champagne. I'm going to start typing in Champagne. There it is. It's already installed. It's ready to use. You have to download it, but you have to install it before you'll have access to that font in your font folder in any of your programs. Once it's downloaded to your computer, that's it. It's now available for all of your programs to access in your font list. Okay, did that answer your question? Okay, and so where are you going to upload this to? You're going to upload it into the brand package. So if we go back to, let's see, where am I going back to? This one. So when you go under course tools to assignments, the brand package is your logo, business card, and letterhead. That is right here. Your brand draft package. Why am I calling it a draft? Because we're going to revisit it again closer to the end of the semester. We're going to add an icon to complete your logo and then refresh anything we need to on your business card and letterhead files to update it for your portfolio at the end of the semester. Okay? Any other questions? All right. So last but not least, I really wanted to give you an hour and a half left of class, but so we're going to roll through the last PowerPoint, which is, and then I won't have to explain the assignment anymore because I think we got it. We're going to quickly go through the typography, so type in business cards. And I encourage you to go through this in a little bit more detail later. So we're just going to go quickly. I can give you a quick overview, but the anatomy of typography is built in here. And so I just want to touch on this, on what this is, so that you have a better understanding for when you're putting your text together in Illustrator. You'll have a better understanding of how things fit, because a font isn't just the font. There's parts of a font that we have to know about. And so the parts of the font I want you to remember are the A, B, C, D, E, F here. Okay, so X height, and you'll see that there's a graphic at the top here. The graphic at the top shows us A, which is X height, B, which is the measuring point size. So the measuring point size includes, C, the ascender line, and down here, F, the descender line, okay? So together, that creates the type size. Because you'll notice that some fonts, why does 12 point in this script look so much different than 12 point in this sans serif font? Why do they look so drastically different in size? Well, that's because when we create a font, we have to take into consideration the ascenders of a letter, like this H here, and the descenders of the letter, like this P here. So you can imagine that the X height here, so the letter A fits and the R fits inside that X height. The body of the letter fits inside the X height. And then it might have ascenders or descenders, these extensions. If you're working with a script font, you might have a small body of a letter to accommodate for this big swirls and swooshes of a script font. But then there are other fonts that don't have really tall ascenders and long descenders. They might be really short. So then the body of the letter appears bigger. It's still 12 points. It still makes up 12 points. But the ascenders and descenders are truncated, the body of the letter gets bigger, so when a appearance 12-point sans serif in this font looks drastically bigger than 12 points in this beautiful swirly script. So that's how we come up with the point size. It includes all of the above. B, it includes the X height, the ascenders, and descenders. Then we have space between the lines called leading. So we're going to skip over that. This typeface poster was made with a single font, extra bold, bold, and regular. If you take a look at these menus in more detail, you'll also see it's one font. Each one of these, to demonstrate how fonts can work nicely together, each one of these menus is using a single font, but different styles of that font. So when you're selecting a font, in my Champagne and Limousines folder, there was regular, and italic, and bold italic. I had other styles to choose from. Some fonts come with a single style. That's it, regular. But some fonts, and many fonts, come with more. They have styles of the font. So it's the same font, but you have access to bold, italic, regular, condensed, extended, extra bold, light, thin. You never know. Helvetica has like 72 different styles to a single font. So it's one font, but it has many styles. But just keep in mind that not all fonts have multiple styles to that font. So styles are what we know as bold, italic, regular. Those are the things that you're probably familiar with, and they might have lots of other names. And then some fonts have no styles. It's just the font, regular, and that's all it has. So just keep that in mind when you're choosing fonts as well. And then the font that you use for your logo, your name, don't repeat that anywhere. Choose another font that goes nicely with it. And so you can see that Quantum here is one font, and they've chosen a different font for all the information here. They've got a bold and a light italic. Bold and light italic. And see the proximity here? Dr. Kenneth Knopf, that's his personal information within the company information. Notice the separation of space and how he treated it with alignment. Left alignment for his personal information, right alignment, bottom right-hand corner, different package of information for the company he works for. So the details are separated by space because personal details, company details. Okay. This one, you can also see nice proximity here. We have the name of the artist and his title separated by space, and then with information here. This would be an expensive card to print because he's using black cardstock paper. He's using a foiled stamp and white ink on a black piece of paper. So this card is a little bit more expensive with die cut round corners. You want to go simple and inexpensive? One color on white cardstock, no cut corners. You can get loads of cards for very little money. So this card would cost much more and take longer to produce. And then we have these great, we're creating proximity or separation of ideas here. Indust Tuesdays, all on the same line, but we have bold versus light or regular, and then they use light. This is one font. Bold, regular, light underneath. They've repeated that on the opposite side. And the packages of information, we have name and what it is, and then the contact details to the right. So they've packaged everything together using proximity quite nicely. This is a fake card, but you can see they even repeated this image on the card as a watermark. But see Funfair and World, one's dark gray and one's lighter gray, and they've separated visually the two words with the percentage of black. But you can also see at the bottom here, Andrew McKinley. What does he want us to do on his card? He wants us to check out his website. How do I know that? Because he's visually communicated with me through the bold text of his name and the bold text of the website. Those are both bold. The rest are in a lighter font or a lighter style of that font. So you can create proximity and visually communicate, I'm Andrew McKinley and I'd like you to go to my website. Because I bolded both those things on my card, I've created a visual relationship between the two. And even though it's separated by other text and space, and that's what I want you to do. So you can visually communicate what you want people to do. So these are beautifully separated by space, name and title, how to get in touch, so email and website, location, address, and then cell phone and business office phone. So beautifully packaged in blocks of color. This would cost a lot of money. This is laser cut into a cutting edge is the name of the business. Yeah, that's pretty literal, right? So that's the blade that goes in a razor. It's old school, but this would have cost a good amount of money. So he's probably not making a lot of these in order to hand out to specific customers he hopes take them on based on just the sheer cleverness of this. And the cost of this card means he's not going to be handing out loads of these to just anybody. You can print 10,000 of the cards below and then have a wrap on it, which is kind of clever. So you can reduce your costs here. This is a beautiful card. This is rag unbleached cardstock. It's become such a trend that it's now expensive to purchase. It used to be cheaper to do it this way. Now it's more expensive because supply and demand has raised the cost of this type of paper. So that's a bummer because my husband uses it for his company, his hobby company. So it costs us more to produce this. And then you can also use a business card for other things too, a way to network and get to know people in a fun way as well. It's still a 3.5 by 2-inch business card. That's what that is. But notice that the logo is in a block of color, so you see some really nice proximity happening in this card as well. All right, now that I've rip-roared through that, I'm going to leave you to your own devices, and I would like you to use the video tutorials under content. Week 2. Start with video number 1, which is creating the logo, which is going to take the most amount of time. You should be able to do it in 20 minutes to half an hour. So you should be able to finish this in the time you have left. So 20 minutes to half an hour, maybe 45 minutes, depends on how intent you get in creating this, because you're just using a font and you're using this video tutorial in week 2. Logo draft tutorial, okay? Once you complete that, you move on to the next one, taking that logo, the one you like, if you've created more than one on the page, taking that, copying it, and pasting it into your business card draft. So then do that tutorial. That should take you maybe, I think it's a 10, maybe 15-minute video, complete start to finish, step by step again. So that shouldn't take you all that long. And then the letterhead's the easiest because it uses the exact same information you have on your business card. You just copy your content of your business card, paste it in a new letter size page document, move it into place, and save it. Okay, so the most time consuming will be your logo draft, followed by your business card, followed by your letterhead. And before you save any of them, I suggest you watch how to save your files as a PDF because some of you still need to save your nameplate properly. I see lots of .ai files. In the comments I would put, can you also save a PDF and upload for grading? That would be great. Just follow that tutorial. Okay? And that's it. Do you have any questions before we go? Except for where to save it. Again, let's recap. You are going to save it under branding draft package. Save your .ai file and the PDF you produce from that file of all 3 files. So you'll end up with 6 files in here eventually. Put them all in there. That way you have access to your .ai to download later to make any corrections based on my comments, so you can improve on that later on to put it in your portfolio. We're also going to be revisiting it later anyway because we're going to update it later on this semester. You can even completely change your mind later on this semester and go, yeah, I really don't like it. I'd like to redo it. It's like, absolutely. This is your brand. This is how you want to represent yourself. Okay, so you'll end up with 6 files in total, the .ai file and the PDF that's produced from that. It's a simple save as PDF, PDFX1A, save, and then upload those files. Okay? All right, do you have any questions for me? Do you have any questions? Is there any instruction document for this assignment? Video tutorial only. So if you could turn on your captions, so on your own laptop or device, you should be able to turn on captions if you need the captions also. But remember, I'm visually communicating. You're going to see me working in Illustrator to do the exact same thing I'd like you to do. Okay? Our fonts will be different, our names will be different, but the process will be exactly the same. Okay, so there's no written instructions. This one is a video tutorial. Okay, Himanshu?
Hello, ma'am.
Hello, what can I answer for you?
Ma'am, I've already mailed you out that I have missed my first week
Yes, and so,
about the assignment.
yeah, so get this assignment done today, and then when you have time over the week, you will need to get caught up. You can watch the class video from last week. It's all there.
And also, I've missed the first assignment.
Yep, I am not docking points right now until everybody is settled and in place. So don't worry about that. You can hand those in next week. Once,
Ma'am,
so
one more thing.
do this one first because it's fresh in your
Okay.
mind, and then move on to the next one to get caught up. Okay?
Ma'am, one more thing.
Yep.
Can we produce or edit in Photoshop and then we can import in Illustrator?
No.
Or we have to do complete in
We
Illustrator?
need to do it solely in Illustrator. And the reason why we do that is because it is a vector file. So I think I mentioned it last week. I might have. But if you're not producing a logo in Illustrator and you produce it in Photoshop, when you enlarge a Photoshop file, what happens? The pixels break down. In Illustrator, it's line art filled with color. You can make the logo you produce in Illustrator the size of the side of a building, and it won't break down. So we're looking to create our logos as vector format, which is line art filled with color. You can only do that in Illustrator. You cannot do that in Photoshop. Photoshop uses pixels.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, you're welcome. Don't worry, we'll get into Photoshop later and we'll have some fun in there, but this is an Illustrator exercise. Okay, any other questions before we go? Okay, so for those of you who you've been moved around from class to class, or there's been some interesting things happening. A few of you have already emailed me. Don't worry, you will need to get caught up, and I would do that soon. But I am not going to penalize you for not having your assignments in from last week because you didn't have access, one, to the assignments, or two, you got moved from one section to the other and now have no access to the last one. So don't worry about that. There's no penalty for that whatsoever. I will give you all the time you need to get caught up. Okay? By week 3, we should all be caught up, ready to go and carry on for the rest of the semester. Okay? I am available for emails. I'm available, and I will be looking at them at 5 o'clock today. So from 5 till 6. So I will look at emails and answer emails today. And then I will be doing that again between, I have to think of what my timeline is tomorrow, 11 and 12 tomorrow, and then after 3 p.m. until 6. So until 6 every day, I will hopefully be checking out my email. So you should always hear back from me within 24 hours. Okay? Anybody else? All right. I'm going to stop recording, and then if anyone else has any questions, I'll take them after the recording stop.